was a year that saw it all. Violence and insurgency threatened Nigeria's future, yet the country also had the green shoots of a new economy driven by tech and the creative industries, demonstrating the paradox of Africa's largest economy. During the first 9 months of 2021, almost 6,000 people were killed in conflicts, according to the independent Global Conflict Tracker. That unrest has caused hundreds of thousands more people to be displaced. Millions have fled their homes, and children in the north are too frightened to go to school, fearing kidnap or worse. In the southeast, separatist sentiments are being stirred and stoked. The economy is growing slower than the rate of population growth, and Nigerians are getting poorer as the country struggles to recover from the pandemic. Despite this chaos, Nigeria still manages to thrive. Lagos is home to several fintech companies worth billions of dollars. Nollywood still produces more films than any other country except India's Bollywood. And there remains a strong sense of national pride and great optimism. In this Arise News special program, we ask the hard question: can Nigeria pull itself back from the brink? With me on this Arise News special program is political analyst Mahmoud Jega, who's on the line from Abuja. And here in the studio with me in London is Africa analyst Anthony Goldman. Welcome to you both. Well, let's start with a look back at a year that has seen an average of 32 people killed and 17 people kidnapped every single day.
Let the world know they carried machetes and hit my son.
Bandits came to our school, entered our house, started shouting, "We are going to shoot them."
Security is a problem in this country.
From attacks and kidnappings to extremist insurgencies and the effects of climate change, almost every corner of the country has been hit by one form of disaster or another.
It is 7 years after the abduction of the Chibok schoolgirls. 7 years later, some of those girls are still missing.
Thank God for my life, because I have never think whether I'll come from that forest, to be sincere.
The waiting game continues when these dozens of people are still in captivity.
My name is Benson Emmanuel. Please, we are begging on our parents, please, come and help us out of here. We've stayed here for days, we have not been eating, most of us have been sick.
There are no humanitarian solutions to humanitarian problems. The only solution is peace.
Just shooting and shooting and shooting.
Confirming the news, quote, "He is dead and remains dead."
These renewed attacks have left thousands homeless.
We're talking of girls who've been in the bandits, in captivity for 4 days. We don't know the extent of the abuse.
Well, with me to discuss Nigeria's escalating insecurity issues is political analyst Mahmoud Jega over in Abuja, and of course here with me in the studio is Anthony Goldman. I will start with you first, Mr. Jega. If we look at Nigeria's insurgency problem, the violence in the north seems to have only worsened across this year. This is despite promises from the Buhari administration that things are getting better. Whose side are you on? What is the true picture?
No, with respect to the Boko Haram insurgency, things are somehow got better in the last few years, in the sense that bombs are no longer going off. I mean, the insurgents are no longer able to plant bombs outside the northeast. Even in the northeast, bombs are not going off for the main part. And you know, the insurgents also split into two major factions, which greatly weakened them, apart from the effort of the security agencies. So the insurgents are now generally contained into a much smaller area. The problem is that they have not been defeated completely. So because of that, millions of internally displaced persons are not able to go back to their communities and resettle. But generally, the insurgents have weakened in the last few years. It is the bandits and the kidnappers that got much worse, especially in the northwest. and in some parts of the north central region in the last few years.
Understood. Anthony, I hope you were able to hear him there. You know, we are talking about the fact that the Buhari administration have promised to resolve this conflict. We've not seen too much evidence of that. Mr. Jega did say that, you know, some parts of the insecurity had been reduced to certain pockets of Nigeria, but clearly it's still the issue of banditry too continues to be a problem. What, if anything, is there to celebrate about? Is there any type of optimism on the horizon, perhaps with new leadership?
Well, look, I think that there has been a systemic issue with violence, not just in the north of the country, but in many parts of the country. In fact, in some ways, I think the violence being organised in the north at least gives an opportunity from a tactical point of view to try to take it on and manage. I think the violence in other parts of the country, which is more linked to just organised crime, presents an even more serious challenge to law enforcement agencies because you're not dealing with a kind of ideology in that conventional sense. But I think that underlying all of that, I think, is the challenge of whether a government which historically has looked at dealing with violence from the point of view of tactics can look at the point of strategy and dealing with the underlying cause of the violence and the economic issues that create that sense of despair and uncertainty that fuels criminal activity and violence.
Thank you, Anthony. But the problems in the north are by no means the only challenges facing Nigeria as 2021 comes to a close. Amid a struggling economy and growing division, the government's failure to provide security has stoked a renewed threat of separatism in the southeast amongst younger people who did not witness the last civil war of 1967 to 1970. And even in the wealthy southwest, there's a clamour for restructuring and constitutional amendment to devolve power away from Abuja. All of this stirring unrest amongst the young.
Now, the trial of the Nigerian separatist leader Nnamdi Kanu resumed today in Abuja.
The movement of the actualization of the sovereign state of Biafra is a secessionist group in Nigeria.
There's been a raging fight going on amongst these two people. The fact that Nnamdi Kanu has been produced in courts, I think would douse a lot of tension in the country.
Only Kanu's lawyers had access to him, and they had a swell time taking selfies in the courtroom.
The Nnamdi Kanu we are talking about today is a person that was abducted in Kenya, then tortured, subjected to all forms of inhuman treatment.
What do you make of the antics of Igboho and others like him, especially Kanu?
All these things that's happening are revolving around the fulcrum of the negligence.
Nnamdi Kanu is a person who is empty in his head, and Nnamdi Kanu wants an Igbo Biafra. Taking our name to hang to what does to himself, it doesn't belong to him. He comes around, he says Biafra is a Jewish state. Well, I am not a Jew. I will never be Jew. My ancestors are superior to Jews.
Parents have refused to bring their children to school. They say they prefer their children to be at home safe than to be dead in the classrooms.
We begin this morning with the news that social media giant Twitter has deleted a tweet from President Muhammadu Buhari.
I think it's quite embarrassing that Twitter has given the Nigerian president a slap on the wrist.
The rules of fair trials is very simple. What are you hiding? If you feel a man have done something wrong, you try him publicly.
There must be fairness. There must be fair hearing. The people must see that justice has been done.
The court acquitted them of treason and terrorism.
15 years. Today, I regain my freedom. To God be the glory.
Still with me here in the studio is Anthony Goldman, Africa analyst. Anthony, if we look at succession, the calls for succession across many parts of Nigeria have grown louder across this year. Could this be a reality? Nigeria is so ethnically diverse. Could we see ethnic pockets breaking away from the country?
I don't think Nigeria is the only country in Africa or even further afield where this issue of identity politics has risen up. Typically, we've seen it in America, we've seen it in parts of Europe, where when faced with the challenges of governance, opportunistic politicians seize on saying this is all perfectly simple, it comes down to who we are, where we're from. And I think that a government that can actually assert its authority and actually demonstrate the value in a country like Nigeria of the strength of diversity, if Nigeria takes no strength from its diversity, there's nothing left really. So I think that the challenge for politicians is to highlight the benefits of the country, the collective action, the economies of scale, and the talent pool that Nigeria as a whole can draw on from working together. And I think that's the best way to overcome this challenge of identity politics, which is not simply a Nigerian issue.
Understood. Thank you very much. Mr. Jega, you heard what Anthony just said there. If we are talking about separatism and trying to solve those issues, do you think an Igbo president would be what is needed?
You see, unfortunately, the agitation to have, among politicians and other statesmen from the southeast, to have a Nigerian president coming from that region was harmed, actually, by the campaign for secession by the indigenous people of Biafra, in particular the violent element of the campaign, including attacking government offices and killing security agents. So there was no sync between those two, because the agitation for presidency is better pursued, politically and through persuasion and peaceful agitation. But where there is a resort to violence, it alienates. But the fact of the matter is that all the elders and statesmen and community leaders and governors and political leaders of the southeast distance themselves from the violent agitation by the indigenous peoples of Biafra. Unfortunately, it had already done a lot of political harm, in other parts of the country. So, but otherwise, the two tactics are actually in conflict.
2021 was also the year that saw the one-year anniversary of the Lekki tollgate shooting. In November, a judicial panel condemned the shooting, calling it a massacre. It accuses Nigerian soldiers of having shot, injured and killed unarmed, helpless and defenseless protesters without provocation or justification. The Lagos State government, which set up the inquiry, has rejected most of the findings, while the federal government has dismissed the report, calling it a sham. The shooting, in which the Lagos State government said only one person died, highlighted the issue of police brutality across Nigeria.
They were shooting. First they came, they shot at up, they'll come down, they'll shoot. Because I can see 3 of those armies in front, they're shooting sporadically.
There's so many young Nigerians that are here today, and quite frankly, they're just tired.
Leadership is not by force. Leadership is not power.
Well, you've come through to it at a very interesting time.
I was hit here. I was punched, I was hit here.
The Arise News team was approached.
We want justice, we seek justice. They killed our people, they killed our citizens.
Yesterday, the IGP came out to say that SARS has been disbanded. This is something we have heard on multiple occasions. Is that why you are back here again today?
People were faced with live bullets.
We were directly harassed by members of your force because we
Any harassment given to you, my apologies.
We will not fail the next generation. They have failed us, but we'll take this country back.
The Nigerian police force is understaffed and overstretched. Niger State has only 4,000 police to protect 24 million people. Poor policing and dependence on the army is stoking the fires of tension and division. Just recently, the federal government has announced a new set of packages for the police, but will they be enough? Mr. Jega, you are well aware of these police packages, what they entail, which include a 20% salary increase. Will that be enough?
No, it cannot be enough, but it's an improvement over the current situation. It is very important to enhance the welfare of the police, and it is also important to follow that up by improving on their equipment and their training and their logistics and welfare facilities such as their accommodation and also health facilities, and also taking care of policemen that get injured and the families of policemen that get killed in the course of action. All this together contributed to the fairly low of the Nigeria police, and although increasing the salary is the first step in the right direction, I hope it will be followed up by other measures.
Mr. Goldman, you'd be well aware that part of the NSAS protest was also calling for a rehaul of how the police were treated. Many of the protesters wanted more benefits going to the police force, and perhaps that would be a holistic solution to police brutality and the very thing that many people were protesting against. It just feels as though there seems to be still a bit of a disconnect.
There is a tension between that sense of impunity that people in law enforcement project, the image that sometimes is projected, what people feel, with the reality of even greater impunity on the part of violent criminals in urban areas, and particularly, I think, in remote roads. And the challenge is to try to get a balance which brings people together to around those values of law and order and safer communities. And I think what happened with NSAS, which I think caught the system, if you like, by surprise, was how quickly things developed because of the power of social media, which I think is something that law enforcement in Nigeria is peculiarly ill-equipped to keep up with the pace of change. And I think that whole episode, I think, underlined how rapidly events on the ground can move, because after what happened in Lekki, there was also a follow-up spasm of violence in many other parts of the country where lots of people were killed, a lot of property was destroyed. And I think that sense of the disruptive power of the communication tools that people have at their disposal is something that I think sooner or later, the law enforcement and the whole judicial environment in Nigeria is going to have to, come up with if people are to have confidence that it's a country in the rule of law.
Thank you, Anthony. Well, still to come on the programme, we'll look at the troubling state of the economy, but also look at why Nigeria has much to be hopeful about. Stay with us. You're watching Nigeria, Opportunity from Crisis with me, Adefemi Akinsanya. Nigeria's economy generates a quarter of Africa's GDP. It is, of course, the biggest in the continent, but Nigerians are not feeling the benefit. 2 recessions and slow growth have once again made Nigerians poorer in 2021, a trajectory that the country has been on since oil prices fell in 2015. Annual food inflation has soared and around 80 million people are living off less than $2 a day, despite the country's significant wealth. A broken economy drives instability, violence, political tensions, and brain drain. Mr. Jega Mahmood, I hope you can hear me. How did we get here? What, if anything, is there to be optimistic about in the first place?
Certainly we have had very difficult socio-economic times. The economy fell into recession about 6 years ago, but then it was slightly on the rebound when the COVID pandemic hit. Now, that one was a worldwide problem, and the whole world is still struggling to emerge out of that, and it hit Nigeria quite hard because of all the lockdowns, and also the effect that it had on international oil prices, which is the biggest source of income for the governments of Nigeria. However, this country has pulled through many tough situations before, and also despite the problems in the oil sector and others, some other sectors like agriculture, like the creative industry and others, were still pulling ahead, and they have mitigated the effect of the recession. And going forward, there is hope that those sectors might actually drag the economy out of the recession and help ameliorate some of the problems that we are experiencing today.
Anthony, Nigeria is constantly referred to as the giant of Africa. Sadly, it remains a poverty capital. I mean, there is some good news, of course. Technology, fintech, definitely, the creative industries. Is that going to do enough to bridge that gap?
I think part of the contradiction, if you like, is between the dead hand of government, the regulation, some of those old industries, oil principally in 1970s kind of model, digging stuff up out of the ground and exporting it for other people to add value, with some of this excitement that's happening, the entrepreneurial spirit, the energy and the initiative. What happened this year in 2021 was the passage of a new oil bill, and I think that although it's quite a technical document, it's not going to make great reading for non-specialists. It does open up the possibility of a transformation of the key constraint on growth in Nigeria, which is access to cheap and reliable energy. This is a reorientation, if you like, away from that old 20th century model towards something that prepares Nigeria for a transition to a greener economy, but also investment in producing energy at home for the domestic market. And I think that that really could be the game changer that could unlock all of the potential that Nigeria has. And that possibly is the one thing alone that perhaps might be the reason to look forward with optimism.
Optimism ahead. Thank you, Anthony. But against this backdrop, Nigerians still thrive and innovate. 2021 saw countless startups and fintech companies expand. Lagos, which is home to half a dozen fintech unicorns, that is, of course, companies worth more than $1 billion, saw much investment from overseas. Nollywood is the second largest movie industry globally, and the benefits from infrastructure projects across the country are starting to be felt. New railways and hospitals are helping to kickstart the economy, but perhaps most importantly, there remains among Nigerians a sense of unity.
It's a great privilege to be a Nigerian, and we're celebrating our 61st anniversary.
We are optimistic with the new breed of leadership. Nigeria is diverse, and we can use that diversity to move the nation forward.
The scale of this place is incredibly imposing, to say the very least. Photos do it absolutely no justice. You just have to see it in person.
We've come to meet people in the business of changing the face of Lagos's transportation sector for the better.
It was a decision of Lagos State government, to transform Oshodi from the chaotic, highly congested, crime-prone environment, to a world-class environment.
The refinery that we built is very, very important. It's going to help to transform not only the oil sector in Nigeria. No, it will transform the entire economy of Nigeria.
Financial technology companies have a huge potential to transform the capital markets and effectively build a digital economy.
For the broader space, it means that there's going to be more recognition of innovation in the market.
Rail lines to connect nearly all the cities, state capitals in Nigeria. They grow, and as the economy grows, they become economically important.
On the fourth day of the Inter-Africa Trade Fair, attention will shift to Nigeria.
There's all sorts of deals going down, and so far so good.
So glad that you noticed it. We made a little subtle effort to represent our country on this Nigeria Country Day.
Adefemi likes chocolate, by the way.
I think we all like a bit of chocolate, don't we? I'm sure Tunde and Rufai definitely like a bit of chocolate.
The Nigerian film industry produces about 50 movies per week, second to India's Bollywood and more than Hollywood.
Don't ruin my traditional honeymoon.
I am not going to die.
Those were Daddy's last words.
The face of transportation in Lagos, Africa's most populous city, is changing. And those responsible for that change say it's happening for the better as they head towards a Lagos being built by the people, for the people. Well, despite the obvious challenges facing Nigeria, there's obviously many reasons for optimism, for there to be national pride. Anthony, thank you for staying with me. If we look at these many reasons to be happy and hopeful, do you think that it's enough to bring the Nigerian nation back from the brink of total despair?
You know why? When I was preparing to come in tonight, I was looking through some old books, and there was a quote from the Daily Times from 1964 during a crisis, I've forgotten crisis of some sort, saying that Nigeria has perfected the art of dancing on the edge of the abyss without tumbling in. Well, that was well more than 50 years ago, and I think Nigerians' capacity to dance has only increased since then. And I think that if Nigeria could match the capacity to manage crisis with actually forward plan and to develop those longer term strategies to invest in infrastructure, I think the future would change really much more quickly, perhaps, than people might imagine.
Mahmoud, do you agree? Do you agree that first and foremost Nigerians have been dancing on the edge of despair, of total destruction? I'd imagine that many Nigerians would agree with that statement. But when we talk about optimism, what are your thoughts on there? Of course, we've mentioned technology, Nollywood. There are many reasons to be optimistic in Nigeria, but are those reasons enough?
There are reasons for optimism. It is dangerous to be dancing for so long on the edge of the precipice, but many times we have pulled back from the brink, and really opportunities that exist in the technological and the creative sector will blossom by the time the immediate problems of security and also the recession induced by the pandemic resolved, which could happen within a year or so. And even the political problems that look challenging at this point could very well be resolved after the 2023 election, and then the country could be on the serious rebound all over again.
Political analyst Mahmoud Jega, thank you very much for your contributions on the show. Likewise, a huge thank you to you, Anthony. Thank you very much for joining me. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Well, 2021 has been a year like no other in Nigeria's recent history. Instability, insurgency, and rising tensions have shown themselves to be very real threats to Nigeria's security and stability. Yet still, its people have found ways to thrive, to innovate and grow. There is still, despite the troubles, a strong and deep sense of national pride of a country that is stronger together. Nigerian entrepreneurship and business innovation continues to grow apace. Infrastructure in hospitals and railways will reduce corruption and support a people looking for reasons to stay. But perhaps Nigeria's greatest asset is its democracy. And in a little over a year, Nigerians will go to the polls and choose not only a new leader, but a new future. And in that, there's hope.